Hi everyone. Today we are going to discuss about DevOps Lifecycle. DevOps Lifecycle is a combination of components. The first component is idea, code, build, test, deploy, and monitor. I'm going to walk you through each component. So the first component that we have discussed is idea. So if you're in an organization, the organization has been running on business logic. Whether it may be economical business logic, or it may be financial, or it may be hospitality, or it may be any other business logic. So you do have idea and you want to make it as executable to the end user. For that, you need to write the code. So the second one is a code that you are going to take one stack and you are going to write the code as per your business logic, which means as per your idea. So you have written a code that a normal human can understand, but you want to make a computer understandable, which means that you are going to deploy, you are going to run the code that you have written into deployed into the machine, which cannot understand the human language. So for that, you need to convert your code from human understandable to computer understandable. That's the phase called as a build. So here you got the idea, you have written the code, and you make your code to computer understandable. And later you have to test as a standardized DevOps culture. So you have to test your source code, whether it is working fine or not. If it is a unit test, integration test, and etc. And once the testing phase is done, you need to deploy into the targeted environment, whether it is a cloud, on-premises data center. And once the deployment is done, you need to monitor how your deployed service is working, whether it is throwing a server-side error or client-side error, and how it is redirecting from one endpoint to another. So by combination of all these components, and you are going to make automation through the CI/CD pipelines. If you heard about DevOps, the second name comes in the utterant world is called as a CI/CD pipeline, which means that you are integrating all these components together and you are making automation without a human interference of each phase. You got the idea, you have written the code and you build it, which is a computer understandable language, and later you have tested and you deployed it. And watch, whatever you deployed, it is going to monitor. And you are going to get the feedback from the monitoring to continuously. This example, in the last video, we have discussed about the set of tools comes in DevOps. So I'm going to list out all the tools in this life cycle, how this DevOps culture is going to fit into the combination of tools. You got the idea? Idea may be stored in anywhere. Maybe it is documented and it can be stored anywhere in a tool. But when it comes to code, you're going to keep your source code somewhere, whether it is a remote repository or whatever it may be. So for that, I'm going to place all the list of tools which comes in a type. Because of in the last video, we have discussed about all the types of tools and we have segregated. Under the code, we may write, the first one is a GitLab. Sorry, I'm going to write as a GitHub as a pre-arranged first. Why have written the GitHub? Because of you are going to store your source code over there. And it may be a Bitbucket and etc. So in this phase, you have idea, you have written the code, and you have keep your source code into the remote repository. Once it is done, you are going to build it. So and yesterday, on the last video, we have discussed about the build tool, which means a project management tool. So the project management tool that we have discussed, which is a Maven and Gradle. So once you have built, once you have convert your code from human understandable to the computer understandable, you are going to test it. Either it may be a unit test or we have a SAST and test, which means static analysis software testing and dynamic analysis software testing. You have tested it and you are going to deploy it. Maybe it is AWS, Azure, or GCP, which is a Google Cloud, or your on-prem data center. Fine. Once the deployment phase is done, you are going to monitor it. Under the monitoring, we may the tool that regularly used for monitoring, which is a Splunk, Prometheus, and Grafana. So these all tools are comes under the DevOps lifecycle. I have written very roughly, but there are few tools also comes under each phase. But you can list it out by googling it. But integration of all these tools we called as a CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous deployment. But which tool that you are used for this CI/CD? We may use Jenkins, we may use GitHub Actions, we may use Azure DevOps. So for keeping one tool as a center, you are going to make this automation. That one called as a CI and CD. So here, this is the tool which is going to take care of all these components and make it as automation. So we have our source code placed in GitHub. This CI/CD tool, maybe take an example of Jenkins, is going to take the code from GitHub and it build with a Maven, and it will test with the SAST and DAST tools, and it will deploy into the target environment, and you will get the feedback from the monitoring tool, which is a Splunk and Prometheus Grafana. Again, you do have a feedback. So with the feedback, you can take the inputs, which service is acting how. As example, you have deployed the X service in AWS or Azure. So you got one 504 error. So from the monitoring, you do get the 504 error logs, and you can deep dive into the logs, and you can understand why this 504 error came, and later you can write your source code again as a quickly. And you can write the source code, you can build it, you can test it, you can deploy it, and again you can monitor it as your recent update. So this is how, by applying the DevOps lifecycle, you are going to get the quick results as a faster. And these all components are came into the DevOps lifecycle, and which is major and crucial for DevOps automations. I hope it is clear for everyone, and I'm going to end this session over here. If you have any questions, you can feel free to drop in comment section. Thank you. Stay safe.